How does a safety pioneer just vanish? That question hit me the first time I stood under a faded Saab sign in Trollhättan. I'm Morgan Lane, and this is Recall Roadmap with Morgan. If you love deep car stories told with care, tap like so, more folks find this one. Today, I'm opening my notebooks, court filings, and old press clips to tell you what really happened to Saab. We'll follow the money, the owners, and the people who still keep these cars alive. Here's the headline that stings. On December 19, 2011, Saab Automobile filed for bankruptcy in Sweden. That's the end of the car maker, not the aerospace company. Hard to square with the start, right? The car division dates back to 1945, and the first model, the Saab 92, arrived in 1949. Safety and oddball engineering were baked in from day one. Then the corporate ride got bumpy. General Motors moved in over time, taking full control in 2000 and holding it until the 2010 sale. I've spent years in safety work and recall investigations, and Saab's story has always felt personal to me. It's a puzzle. A brand loved for brains and safety, yet it ran out of road. So let's rewind to where it all began. An airplane shop that decided to build cars. Picture a company that designs fighter planes, then decides to build a family car. That was Saab. The roots were in aviation in 1937, and by 1949, the first car, the Saab 92, rolled out. You can see the airplane thinking right away. Streamlined shapes, tight cabins, and a focus on safety before it was cool. By the late 1960s, Saab was putting ideas on the street that other brands would copy years later. The 1968 Saab 99 brought a wraparound windshield, headlamp washers, and side impact door beams. It looked different because it was different. Early cars ran quirky tech like freewheeling transmissions and three-cylinder two-strokes that mixed oil with fuel. Odd? Sure. Smart? Also yes, and it worked. The little Saab 96 sold about 550,000 units worldwide. In 1976, Saab celebrated its 1 millionth car built. For a small Nordic brand, that was huge. Fans said these cars had an enduring place in their hearts, and I believe it. Digging through old press kits in my red notebook, I even found sketches for bumper ideas and washer jets that made me grin. But here's the puzzle piece that keeps me curious. If you can innovate like that, why don't you take over the world? The answer lives in Saab's cult years. Let me say it plain. The classic 900 is a legend. Launched in 1978, the 900 and its convertible became icons, and Saab built close to 1 million of them by the early 1990s. Owners loved the turbos, the cockpit-like dashboards, and that hockey stick profile. At shows, Saab sections buzzed, even when bigger brands sat quiet. But passion alone can't keep lights on. The numbers tell the truth. U.S. sales peaked around 39,500 in 2000. By 2011, they fell to about 5,300. That's a 7-fold drop. Still, the community dug in. I remember a fan telling me, half joking, Saabs have more personality than most families. It stuck with me because it's how these cars feel. Safe, clever, and a little rebellious. Heritage mattered too. Back in 1976, Saab hit 1 million cars produced, proof the formula worked for a long run. Yet the market shifted, costs rose, and the niche stayed small. As a safety guy, I admired how they refused to act like anyone else. But the business side wanted scale, and that tension grew. Saab loyalists stayed, new buyers didn't. Do you still have your old Saab? What model is it, and what keeps you hanging on? Let's see why big money steered the next turn. Big money stepped in. In 1989, GM bought into Saab, and by 2000 it paid about $125 million to take full control. The plan was simple on paper. Use GM platforms and parts to lower costs, modernize the lineup, and sell more cars worldwide. The results were mixed. Take the 2003 Saab 9-3. It looked sharp, but under the skin it shared a lot with the Opel Vectra. Smart for efficiency, yes, but to some fans the special Saab feel got thinner. GM even tried a Saab-branded SUV, the 9-7X. It didn't change the game. Meanwhile, U.S. sales slumped, down to roughly 5,000 cars by 2011. all the resources in the world can't help if buyers can't see the difference. I went back through GM statements from that era, and one theme stands out: control of technology and risk. Years later, when Chinese investors showed up, GM would warn that a sale could adversely affect GM's interests worldwide. That stance tells you how tight this leash was. Then came the late 2000s financial storm and GM's own crisis. If Saab struggled under a giant swing in good times, what would happen in bad? Enter the most unlikely rescuer you could imagine. A boutique supercar maker saving a Swedish family brand? That was the headline. On January 26, 2010, Spyker Cars, led by Victor Muller, bought Saab for about $74 million. The mood in Trollhättan was electric. Fans cheered. Reporters said, "Saab lives on." I wanted to believe it too. Muller talked a big, hopeful game. He hinted that people expected Spyker to end up in the graveyard with Saab, and he planned to prove them wrong. But when I read through the filings and news updates from 2010 and 2011, the cracks showed. Old debts lingered. Licenses tied to GM tech made every deal complex. By late 2011, Spyker's parent, Swedish Automotive, openly said it did not expect to realize any value from owning Saab. That's a harsh sentence to type, but it's what they said. If you enjoy deep dives that connect safety, history, and the real-world money trail, hit subscribe to Recall Roadmap with Morgan. I'll keep it clear and honest. Back to the story. Spyker tried to launch new models and chase fresh funding. There was still a path on paper, but the next chapter would depend on one thing: outside cash. And the biggest checks were waiting in China. This is the turning point. In 2011, Saab lined up lifelines from Chinese partners: Zhejiang Youngman and Pangda. Cash, distribution, a path forward. But there was a catch. Much of Saab's tech still sat under GM licenses. GM looked at those deals and said no. The warning was blunt. Letting Saab go to a Chinese buyer would adversely affect GM's interests worldwide. In plain English, their intellectual property might land in a rival's hands. I understand that fear. I work in safety and compliance, and I've watched tech leakage wreck plans. But that stance also cut Saab's oxygen. Without those funds, suppliers went unpaid and the factory stalled. By September 2011, Saab sought court protection, a last attempt to hold on. I've reviewed internal memos and public statements from that stretch. Everyone knew the clock was ticking. The board later said that without more funding, insolvency was unavoidable, and filing would be in the best interest of creditors. It's hard to blame a single villain in a story this complicated. What I can say is this: the window closed fast, and the outcome was final. Which brings us to the day Saab hit the wall. December 19th, 2011. A Swedish court received the filing. Saab Automobile was bankrupt. Workers went home for the holidays to a quiet plant. The board's statement was clear. Without more funding, the company would be insolvent, and bankruptcy was in the best interests of its creditors. Around $2 billion in debts hung over the brand. Soon after, GM cut off technical support tied to its platforms and systems. Production couldn't just restart without those links. Spyker, Saab's last owner, pointed a finger and filed a $3 billion lawsuit in 2012, alleging that GM's actions were meant to drive Saab into bankruptcy by blocking rescue deals. GM called the claims baseless. A judge later dismissed the suit in 2013. I'll say it again because it matters. Those sabotage claims were allegations by Spyker, not a proven fact. I've spent a lot of nights reading those court papers and talking to people who were there. No matter where you land, the human part is the heaviest. Engineers, line workers, and dealers who loved the cars and lost their jobs. But the Saab story didn't end at the courthouse. A new team showed up with a different plan. Could a fresh group bring Saab's spirit back with electric power? In June 2012, National Electric Vehicle Sweden, NEVS, bought Saab's main assets. Their goal sounded bold: build EVs in Trollhättan using Saab know-how. For a town built around cars, that felt like a lifeline. And they did get cars rolling. On September 19, 2013, the first NEVS-built 9-3 sedan drove off the line. Limited production restarted that December with Aero sedans while teams worked on an electric version. I remember paging through dealer newsletters that glowed with the word Phoenix. It was more than a nickname, it was a promise. But the legal reality didn't match the dream. The Saab name and Griffin logo were owned by Saab AB, the aerospace company. By 2014, the license to use the Saab brand name was pulled. NEVS could build cars, some even based on the 9-3 platform, but they had to wear the NEVS badge. The result felt familiar, yet strange. The spirit of engineering was there, but the old name was gone. So where did Saab truly live now? In the owners, the parts, and the community. Here's the surprise I love sharing. Saab isn't gone from the road. Not even close. Roughly 1 million Saabs still drive worldwide, with more than 200,000 in Sweden alone. That's loyalty you can measure in daily commutes and snow day starts. Keeping them alive takes creativity. There's a web of specialist shops, salvage yards, and clubs that trade knowledge like gold. Saab Parts International markets original parts for many models, and enthusiasts catalog hard-to-find bits. Then, in 2023, a Swedish engineering firm called Techroy teamed up with Svenska Saabklubben to restart production of genuine Saab parts right in Trollhättan. That's the old home base building new life. When I phoned around to verify, the message was consistent. Owners need support, and the support is growing. I've consulted with parts networks to see which models still have strong coverage. The answer is encouraging. If you maintain your Saab with care and source correctly, you can keep it safe and solid for years. That's my priority. Safe cars, driven with confidence. It's also the brand's best memorial. The factory may be quiet, but the roads say otherwise. And that sets up the final piece. What exactly is Saab's legacy now? For me, Saab is a feeling. Calm steering in a storm, sturdy doors, odd solutions that make sense. We trace the arc, aircraft smarts in 1949, the 99's safety streak in 1968, the 900's cult glow, GM's tough love, Spyker's brief hope, the blocked escape to China, the 2011 fall, and the NEVS reboot. Through it all, a theme never left: build for safety and character. That DNA outlived the badge. I take this lesson into every shop and every driveway I visit. Innovation matters, but scale and timing matter too. Saab pushed side impact beams, washed its headlamps, and put turbos in family cars. The world didn't always reward that, but drivers did. The proof is on the road and in the parts bin still humming. If you enjoyed this journey and want more clear human guides to tricky car stories, please subscribe, like, and share. It helps this work reach more owners who need it. Thanks for watching. We spent hours combing company filings, museum archives, and interviews to bring you something fair and useful. Now I want to hear from you. Which Saab model is your all-time favorite, and why?